comment period. Now we move into scheduled matters. On the agenda, for each item, there will be a presentation by city staff. For items that involve applicant requests, the applicant will be asked to address the commission if they so desire. I will then open for public comment via Zoom and in-house. I will close the public comment period after all comments have been provided and after all of our questions regarding the testimonies during the comment period have been answered. After the comment period is closed, the commission will then deliberate on the items and may have additional questions for staff. We cannot take additional testimony or questions from the public after the comment period is closed. Our first item is item A, study of the consistency of the city capital projects program with our general plan. Our presenter is Mr. Jonathan Atkinson. Please proceed.
Good evening, Chair and Planning Commissioners. Tonight, I will be asking the Planning Commission to find the city's capital projects program for the fiscal year 2024 to 2025 consistent with the city's current general plan. The general plan is the blueprint for meeting the city's long-term comprehensive vision. The city is currently in the process of updating the general plan. As you know, California state law requires that the Planning Commission review the city's capital projects program for conformance with the general plan on an annual basis. Fiscal year 2024 to 2025 includes 27 capital projects to be facilitated by the city's Public Works Department. The capital projects are consistent with the following general plan elements: public facilities and services, circulation, open space, conservation and recreation, and land use. The capital projects fall under 4 general categories: public infrastructure, facility, and equipment maintenance, repair, and upgrades. These projects range from a new entryway for the Cement Hill water treatment plant to replacing and upsizing a water main along Hell Ranch Road. Transportation maintenance, repair, and upgrades projects include designing and constructing new ADA curb ramps to widening Vanden Road. The next set of projects fall under open space and recreation, and these are projects that range from irrigation system repairs for the city's golf courses to new restrooms at Lee Bell Park. The last category of projects is Heart of Fairfield plan projects, and these projects range from undergrounding the overhead utilities to crosswalk, intersection, and street improvements along Texas Street. Staff recommends that the Commission adopt Resolution PC 2024-02, which finds the capital improvement program for fiscal year 2024 to 2025 consistent with the general plan. I would be happy to answer any questions from the Planning Commission about this review. I also want to note that Public Works staff is in attendance to answer any questions that arise on any particular capital projects.
Thank you, Jonathan. I remind us all that this is the time period to ask questions of staff, not for deliberation. Once we've reviewed any questions commissioners may have, then we'll open it up for public comments. Commissioners, do you have any questions? Please.
Jonathan, I just have one. On these capital projects, do we have DBE goal, a minimum goal set aside on any of these? Because are any of them using federal monies that we get disadvantaged business enterprise contractors as part of the percentages for the construction?
That's a question that I will defer to our Public Works staff, who's in attendance.
Here comes Ryan.
Okay. And if you wouldn't mind just repeating that question for the city engineer?
Hey, Ryan. So, with these capital expenditure projects, are there DBE goals established for percentages on these, and what is that percentage?
Good evening, Planning Commission. I'm Ryan Punganiban. I'm the Assistant Public Works Director and City Engineer. So DBE, Disadvantaged Business Enterprise, is only utilized when there's federal grant-funded projects. Currently on our capital project list, there are a few that are showing up as federally grant-funded. So the Vanion Road project, as Jonathan had mentioned, that has received a federal grant, and there is a Disadvantaged Business Enterprise goal as part of that project.
Thank you. My only recommendation is that we don't do it just because we have to do it. It should be something we should look at doing because it's the right thing to do. So that's my only other comment. Thanks.
Just following up on that, Ryan. The HUD CBD program also provides grants, some of which can be used for capital projects. Are those included?
That's correct.
I know it's speculative every year as to what will be approved.
Yes, that is correct. So for this upcoming year, we plan on starting the design for 2 projects. One is ADA ramp improvements that are going to be within an area north of Travis Boulevard. And then we're also going to be working on the design of a new potential restroom that will be located at Lee-Bell Park.
Okay, I see now. You've got those noted. Thank you. Commissioners, other questions? Okay. Okay, I now open the public comment period. I do not have any cards for this topic, and I see no hands raised online. I will now close the public comment period. We'll now open it up for commission deliberation. If there is not any deliberation, I'll entertain a motion.
Go ahead.
Do I have a motion?
I'll go ahead and make the motion.
Thank you. And a second?
So moved.
Pardon me?
I'll second.
Okay.
Can we clarify what the motion is, if the motion is to
Oh,
approve the
very good.
resolution or something
you.
different?
No, to approve the resolution as stated.
Just for the record, PC 2024-02.
Correct.
Okay, the motion has been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes. Okay, for our main event, the next item is item B, an appeal of the zoning administrator's approval of the request for a minor development review for the Archway Recovery Services project at the corner of Peachtree Drive and Heath Drive. Our presenter is Tendai
Mutunga, you got it.
Thank you. Sorry for stumbling over that. Please go forward, Tendai.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before you this evening is a consideration for this appeal for Archway Recovery Services Facility, which has submitted an application for a minor development and an environmental impact. And this project was appealed by the community at large, so that's why we are here. Otherwise, it was done by the zoning administrator had approved it. This is the zoning administrator's appeal process, which is governed by section 25.41.1, which gives the authority for the zoning administrator to make a decision after deliberation of a project. Section 25.44 goes into detail on the appeal process, which is what transpired. The zoning administrator's decision was appealed, and it was appealed to Planning Commission, and the Planning Commission is here tonight to make a decision on that appeal. Most of the appeal issues were focused on conditions of approval of the project and the entire project scope of entitlement. My presentation tonight will be based on the overview presented before you, starting with the background, and my conclusion will be the recommendation to Planning Commission to act on the project. On April 20, 2023, Archway submitted an application to Community Development Department for us to consider their application or their proposal for a recovery facility. And upon that review, staff determined that the project required a mitigated negative declaration. On October 17, 2023, staff received feedback from the community, and the staff and the applicants put their heads together and modified the condition, the project, the architectural design of the project, and the site plan so as to address some of the concerns that were expressed by the community. On March 18, the zoning administrator held a public hearing. Among the attendees were 12 members of the public and 5 Archway representatives. 2 comments were received in the form of emails. Mostly concerns raised were about the compatibility of the project to the neighborhood. The zoning administrator closed the public hearing and did not take any action. However, on April 8, 2024, the zoning administrator acted on the project and approved the project after having the time to consider all the testimony that was provided on March 18 and from the public and also from the city staff. Just to give you a background, community care facilities are permitted uses by right, and they can be defined as follows. Any family home, group care facility, or similar facility licensed by the state of California to operate for 24 hours per day. It could be residential, non-medical care, including but not limited to persons with disabilities or incompetent persons. This project qualifies for to be reviewed under California Welfare and Institution Code, Section 5960.3, and is not subject to city discretionary review. However, due to some local funding opportunities, a minor discretionary review will be warranted. This is the project site, located south of Peachtree and east of Heath Drive. The project site is about 1.77 acres. The applicant is only utilizing 0.9 of an acre of that property. And as I said, it's located on the southeast corner of Heath Drive and Peachtree Drive. Currently, the land use is vacant, and the zoning designation is residential high density. This is a contextual map giving you the overview of the site location, project site location, in reference to the east side of the city and Highway 80. which makes it possible to access the property. The map image on the left represents our zoning, our general plan land use designation. The one on the right represents the zoning designation. As you can see, the project site indicated by the star is shown as RH, which is residential high density. So there is consistency between the zoning and the general plan. The project site, the project itself will be 18,800 square feet. And it will be 32 feet in height. That is the building. And it will provide 62 beds for inpatients. And will provide 19 parking stalls. There will be a trash enclosure associated with the project. Previously, before we took comments from the public, the trash enclosure was located on the east side of the property site, very close to the property line around, I don't know whether you can see it, around here. After consideration of the community input, the trash enclosure was located south of the building, immediately south of the building here. The property will be accessed from Heath Drive and Peachtree Drive. Otherwise, there's both access on both roads. And it will be gated and fenced. There's a lot of stormwater treatment facilities in the area. And there will be a lot of landscaping along the street frontages and within the southern property line. City staff imposed some special conditions on the project after we had considered comments from the neighborhood. There will be a 24-inch box tree called Chinese pistache along the frontage of along the street frontage, and these trees will be planted at 1 for every 30 feet. In other words, they are spaced 30 feet apart. And there will be also 24-inch box yen plum pine, 10-gallon evergreen shrubs along the southern property line. The ornamental fence along the southern property line shall be no taller than the existing good neighborhood fence that's already in place. This is a variety of some of the tree species and shrubs that will be planted within the project site. These are the building elevations, starting with the west elevation, east elevation, and south and north elevations. Prior to zoning administrator's decision on April 8, staff received feedback from the community expressing concerns about the building architecture, blending in or not blending in with the neighborhood. There were also concerns about the on-site drainage, screening between development and cottages to the south. And there were also concerns about the street tree species not being provided in a sufficient manner or well specified. Staff worked with the applicants to revise the architecture beyond meeting the design criteria of the city design development guidelines and include several elements to improve the overall aesthetic of the building so that it can blend in with the rest of the neighborhood. Oh, I'm sorry. The two-story recovery facility building massing is broken up into using various paint colors, and accents elements, such as horizontal siding, as you can see the crossbars going down and sideways of the, within the building, as well as horizontal siding and accent trim. This was all done to beef up the appearance of the building and make it blend in with the neighborhood. As you can see, the corner elements of the building were also popped out so that they can create a better vision of the building fascia. The roof overhang around the building corners were popped out, providing a better profile of the roof eave so that there's a good appearance. Additionally, the elevations provide more than one plane, adding articulation and movement to the facades, with rows of windows. As you can see, they stretch from left to right. Balconies, pop-outs, and wood panels. These are going up and down again. And the roof line was revised to create a more pronounced overhang. Site plan, there were also some revisions on the site plan. That coordinated and add landscaping screening to the southern property lines, which were not quite addressed in the original submittal. Prior to addressing most of the requirements, staff researched the tree species that were planted in the existing neighborhood so that this project would be conditioned to match those trees. And that was done, and all conditions were modified to comply or to match the existing species around the neighborhood. The Public Works Department coordinated with the applicant's engineers to ensure that the project will hold and drain stormwater appropriately. And that joint effort will help to resolve the existing issue of the unimproved property draining onto the adjacent homes, causing flooding. So that problem of flooding will be eliminated by the existence of this project when it's approved. As I said earlier, the project prepared a mitigated negative declaration. All the impacts were identified, and most of the impacts were involving air quality, biological resources, cultural resources, geology and soils, and tribal and cultural resources. All those impacts that were identified on the project were determined to be mitigated to less than significant levels. The appeal analysis deals with land use, conditions of approval, procedure, and the California Environmental Quality Act. These were the issues that were cited in the appeal. The appeal also cited the regulatory ambiguity, and it also cited that the high density is supposed to provide 15 to 22 units per acre, in other gross acre, versus 62 beds which are being proposed for the project. Municipal codes, the appellants, which is the community, also assess that the municipal code restricts the city's ability to require a conditional use permit. Based on those concerns, staff also provide an analysis. Community care facilities permitted by right. And the density for the property is not regulated by number of beds. It is regulated by compatibility determined by the residential high density setback, height regulations, and the number of bedrooms that are equivalent to the property. The city's discretion to require a conditional use permit or a permit by right zoning ordinance permits. This means only the zoning itself allows this use, and planning commission or city council have no purview in interfering what is permitted by the municipal code unless the general plan and the municipal code are revised. Permitted land uses are not under planning commission's purview for decision making. Planning commission is empowered to evaluate architectural and design, site planning, and environmental concerns. There were also issues that were asserted regarding lack of green tree species, which should be a minimum of 30 feet in height and 30 feet in width. There was also an issue regarding the wood slate fence, evergreen shrub, to reduce glare. In other words, the community was requesting these items so that glare in the community would be reduced to an acceptable level. It was also suggested that the drainage swell should be 2 feet setback on the bench. Standard conditions of approval were involving trash enclosure regulations, architectural details, landscape species, and photometrics. And also the community cited the illumination or the lighting at St. John's, which are causing a glare in the neighborhood. Below, the staff addresses those concerns. Staff has added a 24-inch box evergreen tree called year-plum pine. The ornamental fencing provides a consistent design and reduces maintenance concerns between the two fences. If the two fences are put together, the space between the two fences will remain unmaintained and will be a nuisance to the community. As far as this project is concerned, standard conditions are generally not modified. Special conditions are ideally or identically protected species. And I should also bring to your attention that the St. Joseph's Church is a separate legal parcel from the project site where this project is existing. So those are two different parcels. Here we are here to consider this application for the for service facility, the actual service facility, not the existing structure where the church is. If the church is causing any nuisance in terms of illumination, the community has the right to come to the city and involve our code enforcement, or provide the complaint to code enforcement so that they'll look into it. The community also assessed that the online posting was not enough or sufficient to be informative to the community. And they also questioned the public hearing date. And they also questioned the zoning administrator's decision, which was made after the hearing. Our staff is here to let you know that we have services on eTrack, which is a service available online for the community to review anything that's being proposed in the city. And this project was posted on eTrack. The environmental documents were also posted on the city website, starting on the whole month of February. And the hard copies of the environmental reviews were posted at the city counter. It was just a matter of calling city staff for anybody to have access to the documents for them to come and review. Planning Commission is a separate hearing from what was the hearing that was held by the zoning administrator previously on March 18. This hearing reopens the analysis of this project entirely afresh. The public is allowed to provide new comments to help the decision makers. The community also appealed against the initial study and cited that it was insufficient. In other words, the environmental document that was prepared, the community, assessed that it was not done properly or it was not sufficient to address all the concerns. The community also addressed the project description as insufficient, not addressing what the project was proposed for. There was also concerns on land use planning and the policy considerations and the impact analysis. Staff provides the following comments. Minor edits to the initial study to address some of the comments were addressed, were inserted to the document. In other words, the initial study was revised to address all your comments. However, none of the changes impacts the environmental conclusion, and no impacts or mitigation measures were identified. These are the overall staff analysis. As I said earlier on, this land use is permitted by right. There was no need for a use permit or introducing a use permit which was not called for in the municipal code. Our conditions to approve this project have been revised to address most of your concerns. And above all, the project meets findings of approval, which enforces or empowers the Planning Commission to approve the project based on the findings. Our recommendation to Planning Commission, we recommend that adopt Resolution PC 2024-03, denying the community appeal, affirming the zoning administrator's approval of minor development review with modified conditions as you see fit, and adopting the mitigated negative declaration that was prepared for the project. That concludes my presentation. The project applicant is here tonight to address any questions you may have, so as staff from different departments to give you all the information you need based on your questions. Thanks for the opportunity to present this to you.
Thank you, Tendai. We appreciate the presentation. Let's open it up for commissioner questions to staff. Mr. Kennedy, do you want to start us off?
Sure. The only thing I have to say, a couple things. Number one, thank you everybody for showing up. It's great to see the chamber filled with concerned citizens from both sides. And the evaluation project, to reiterate what was just stated, is we as a commission are allowed to evaluate the project on 4 basic tenets: zoning compliance, architectural design, site planning, and environmental review perspective only. And so through my deliberations and comments will be specific to those 4 items. So That's the only question and comments
you.
that I have.
Commissioner Paul?
The only thing I would say that since we have a lot of citizens here, after we hear them, and if they can show well, it's against the general welfare of the surrounding neighborhood, only then I may have few questions from them as well as from our presenter.
Okay.
I think you're going to, first off, thanks for all of you coming. And if I were sitting where you are, I would probably have the same views that you have. Unfortunately, our hands are pretty tied. We don't have a lot of wiggle room on how this is going to go because it's mandated, and the municipal code, we have to follow it. But I'm more than willing to listen to all of your opinions this evening. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm wondering, Mr. Feinstein, if you can, for the dais and also for the audience, those in present and also on Zoom, just share a little bit about the permitted by right use permit. If you can just share some background on that, I think it would be helpful. And then Chairperson Matthews, because we have a full house and we may have a lot on Zoom, but just a reminder to please go back and forth so that our online audience is intermingled with the comments from those in person. Thank you.
Thank you for the reminder. So,
Sure.
Dave, it might be helpful for you to speak to the whole land use concept.
Yeah, so your questions about use permits and permitted uses. So under our zoning, we break the city up into a range of different zoning districts. This one is zoned high-density residential, so it's the typical kinds of uses you would see are apartments, up to 22 units per acre, 45 feet tall, things like that. Is a basic common permitted use. So under our zoning, we break the city up into different zones, and then there's a list, essentially, of a long range of uses, and the zoning ordinance identifies whether or not those uses are either permitted by right, conditionally permitted, or not permitted. And so a use, I think the focus here is whether or not you can require a use permit. So if the use is listed as allowing a use permit, or I should say requiring a use permit, the commission would look at a range of issues associated with the activity, particularly a lot of operational conditions. You know, the way in which it's operated, is that causing impacts on the neighborhood? Is there an overconcentration of those kinds of uses? So if you have the ability to apply a use permit, you're particularly looking at, do we need to apply some operational conditions, or is there an overconcentration of that particular activity? If the use is not permitted, it's pretty clear you can't do it at that location. Otherwise, the uses are listed as permitted uses. And so in this case, we have a state licensed community care facility providing service for folks who have certain disabilities. And so they're helping to treat those disabilities. So this is a permitted use. As far as the city is concerned, our zoning does not, basically, as a permitted use, it does not give the commission the discretion to apply any operational conditions, look at overconcentration, things like that. The one thing I will note is there is a built-in concentration standard for community care facilities, even though you can't look at it from that standpoint. There's a yes or no question. Is there another state licensed community care facility within 300 feet of this one? So we reviewed the records that we have, shows the nearest one is over 800 feet away. We're not sure if it's still operating, but the last record that we had showed that there was a license. We also rely on the state. The state ultimately is the entity that issues a license for this activity. They will review their own records. We get notice from the state every time that they are about to issue a license for one of these facilities. They say, we've reviewed our records, we don't find one within 300 feet, because that's also a common state threshold, separation threshold. They ask us, do you have any records that show otherwise? And so we also rely on the state to do their own review. with that state license, lots of the kinds of operating concerns that we at the local level might have about the operations of a facility, the state license procedure is really where that goes to. And so the city in our code, you may agree with how our code is written or not, but the code is adopted by the city council, and it essentially says we look to see that the state has licensed that operation, and we ourselves do not put any additional operational conditions on it through a use permit. So lengthy. I don't know if that answers your question, but
Thank you. I'll pass it on.
Thank you for that presentation. It's very detailed. Under site planning, I do have a question in regards to lighting and if additional lighting is going to be required for this facility, because I did see that there was something about lighting in regards to St. Stephen's, but will this facility be well lit outside? And then I also was wondering if I know there was something saying about the maintenance would be reduced between the two fences, but is there any point where this building is where there will be alleyways created, like narrow alleyways or alleyways where you can't really see well?
There are two types of reviews. Now, the applicant submitted this light illumination plan, which is acceptable to the city, and also there is one issue that came up from the crowd, from the audience, that was regarding noise. We also look against that. In the case of noise, though it's not addressed in your question, the city has a leeway to operate between 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. with acceptable range of noise as per municipal code. That is determined to be held to everybody who lives in the community. When it comes to lighting, when an application comes to the city, we review that it has submitted all the plans, including the illumination plan for the site. If there is any bleeding of that light to adjacent properties that would interfere or that would pollute the area, we adjust in our reviews. So there are two opportunities. This is the first review. Second review, they will submit for building permits. The building inspectors will also review that, so is our city engineering division, to make sure that the illumination emanating from this project site is not going to interfere with the surrounding properties. With the existing, with the St. George, the St. Stephen's Church, that one, the only option we have now is to go through city code enforcement officers to say, hey, this is this kind of illumination acceptable? They will determine and let the public know that yes, it's within the range or it's not within the acceptable ranges. The problem being that it's an existing structure and it has nothing to do with this site plan that we are considering tonight. They are two different legal parcels.
And I'll add a few technical details to that as well. So we do a preliminary review of the lighting, but the project comes with a collection of standard conditions of approval that go on pretty much every larger project that you review. It requires a couple of things. First of all, it requires that as a part of the building permit application, there be a photometric study provided that shows how the lighting is distributed. The measurement is what we call foot candles. It's just it's a measure of intensity of light. The city has adopted a standard of 1 foot candle at least everywhere, all the way out to the periphery. The determination is 1 foot candle is sufficient to provide enough lighting that people can safely operate, move around on that site at night, that the police can see in there if needed. But although it's 1 foot candle at the periphery, there's also a requirement that all lighting is to be shielded so that the lighting goes down. It doesn't go outwards to the next door neighborhood. So for this project, as a part of that photometric review, we'll make sure that there's at least enough lighting so that it's safe operations. We will also review the light fixtures to make sure that they're designed to point down. As we are doing the site visit during construction, when they install those lights, we'll look to make sure the screening on the on the, like, I don't know, it's not a light shade, but, you know, the fixture itself is pointed in a downward condition. And on the fence, you know, the key concern that we have, there was a request for another fence. There's an existing fence there. We want to make sure we don't have two solid fences together with this sort of gap, this no man's land in between them, where a child could fall in there, an animal could fall in there and not be able to get out. So we certainly allow decorative metal, sort of an open sort of wrought iron fence, that separation, because you can see in there, you can see if there's anything trapped. But we certainly don't want two solid fences with a gap between them at that location.
Okay, I think that addresses what, thank you for the clarity.
Any other question? If this is a 62-bed in a high-density zoning area, if it were an apartment, how many apartment units would be possible at that site? Just by way of comparison?
Yeah, I have the number. I don't know, Tendai.
Yeah, it will be, well, the municipal code calls for between 15 and 22 units per gross acre.
Yeah, the site, there's two ways to look at this, and I'll give you the more conservative number, which is a smaller number. The property itself is 1.77 acres. You multiply 1.77 times the top range of the density, which is 22 units per acre, that's 39 units. You know, it can be a mixture of 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, 3 bedroom we typically get. So if you sort of assume two bedrooms per unit, you're looking at, I think, 78 bedrooms total. That's actually a conservative number because under the city code, when we measure density, you actually measure it out to the center line of the street. And so we didn't even, you know, trying to consider how many bedrooms might an apartment project have. We didn't even count the fact that they technically would be allowed to have some more units because you count farther out into the street. But the 1.77 alone, you know, if it was all 2-bedroom units, you're looking at 78 beds.
Okay.
And up to 45 feet tall, whereas this building's 32 feet tall.
Thank you. Question as a point of order. To invite the applicant up, do I need to open the public comment period? Okay, any other questions?
I have one more question.
Yes.
So, and thank you for allowing me to ask another question. On the vacant parcel next door, I see they've got the ornamental fencing with the sliding gate. The question is, going north-south, the fence between the facility and the vacant parcel, is there a fence there, and what is the composition of that fence? Is it metal? Is it wood? Is it ornamental?
Yeah, I don't think there's a fence on that side. The fence is to keep, I believe, to keep vehicles from entering the driveway. Tendai, I don't know if you have an answer about the fence, or maybe the applicant has an answer.
Yeah, I think we'll defer that question to the applicant to explain the type of fence. I think it's ornamental fencing. That's my guess, but I will let him elaborate further.
Great, thank you.
Commissioner Wordblend, did you have another? Okay.
Oh, you didn't have, okay. Something was brought up about the density, which leads me to the question about expansion opportunity. Because I did see that in the presentation that in the future there may be opportunity for expansion. What exactly would that, like what could that entail? Are we talking about building another level up? Are we talking about going out?
Yeah, so none of the plans proposed by the applicant, nothing proposed for entitlement shows any details. There's simply two words: future expansion. So there's no details. Your entitlement today does not approve anything. Any future entitlement, they would have to come and show us what they want to do. All it is two words. So we know there's some consideration, but as far as anything that was submitted for entitlement, there's no details whatsoever.
Okay, so they wouldn't be able to maybe build another floor or something without coming back and getting a permit or going back to planning?
That's correct. They couldn't do anything like that without coming for a fresh entitlement. And at that point, we would know much more about what it is what they would want to do. I don't think it's likely they would come into the future.
Thank you.
It'd be entirely speculative at this point, based on the plans that were submitted.
And just to clarify, that proposal would go through the planning commission or first through the zoning administration and then to planning commission? What
Yeah.
would be that process, please?
It would be go through the zoning administrator, so it would be a similar if it's something that's of similar scale, shall we say. I mean, at the moment, it's completely speculative. We don't know what that project would be, but most likely it falls within the zoning administrator's purview.
Commissioner
So,
Greeley.
so I wanted some clarity on the fencing and gated. My understanding is that we don't have any authority on requiring a specific type of fencing or a height, or that it's gated and it's locked at specific times or anything like that. Is that correct?
Yeah, for around the periphery, along the street, along the adjacent piece of property, the code does not mandate any sort of fencing whatsoever. If it was a commercial property, there might be, but there's no mandate for fencing.
Thank you.
Okay, I'd like to now open the public comment period and begin by inviting the applicants, James Halliburton and Kevin Phillips, to please come forward. I did.
Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, my name is Kevin Phillips. I'm the Executive Director of Archway Recovery Services. We are licensed by the Department of Healthcare Services. We are an accredited rehabilitation facility, accredited by the Commission on Accreditation of Rehabilitation Facilities, which is the only accreditation agency that is endorsed by the American Society of Addiction Medicine. We recently had an audit by Partnership Health Plan of California. We passed with a 98% on our audit, which is close to 100%. We had a site visit by the Department of Healthcare Services today at 2 different facilities, and we passed with no deficiencies. Our current location at 1525 Union Avenue, we've been there for over 20 years with no incidents in that history. We are a professional organization. Our residents come in with a medical diagnosis. They're treated following an assessment, using a treatment plan, and they're discharged after they've completed treatment. The residents in the facility are under supervision 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They are not allowed to leave the facility unsupervised. We are a highly regulated operation. We are regulated by the state. We're supervised by our contracting partners and by our accreditation agency. We've had a couple of conversations with the surrounding neighborhood, and they all support what we do. Their concern is rooted in fear. They are afraid of the people that we will be treating in our facility. I believe the fear is based on unknowns. And I have high confidence that 1, 2, or 3 months after we've been in operation, all the fears of the community will dissipate and go away. The people we treat, based on pretty standard research, there are 11,000 people at least, and this is a conservative number, there are 11,000 people in the city of Fairfield who qualify for our services. That is, they have a medical diagnosis for substance use disorder. And if we were not here, our neighbors could not be served in their community. We are a good community partner. We are your friends, we are your neighbors, and we are simply here to serve.
Why don't you hold tight just for a minute? Let's see if commissioners have specific questions for the applicant. I have a few, but Commissioner Kennedy, do you want to start off?
The only question I am expecting an answer on is that fencing that they said to talk to the applicant about. So the fencing between the vacant lot and the driveway.
Do you want to address that?
I have no opinion about fences, the wooden fence. The driveway, our residents do not have vehicles. They're not allowed to have vehicles on site. The only vehicles that are on site will be staff, and they work on specific shifts. There will be no vehicles coming and going on the property generally between the hours of 10 and 6. The driveway, these technical matters, I leave to the architects. We are committed to obeying the law, observing every regulation, and we are committed to doing the best work we can, following the best practices in our industry, being a good neighbor in our community. So any concerns that the planning process had, the discretionary reviews that we've gone through, we've been open and responsive to your recommendations, and we've made those changes.
Let me rephrase the question, sorry.
Sure.
Is there a fence between the driveway and that?
No, there is not a fence.
Okay, thank you.
So that, we have no plans of doing additional development on that property. The deed is a 30-year restricted deed. There can be no further development on that property that is not approved by the state of California, by the Department of Healthcare Services. So we do not have the authority or the freedom to do any other development on that property without explicit written approval by the Department of Healthcare Services in the state of California. Any additional development that happens there will be in terms of beautifying the landscape, putting in sprinkler systems, adding lawn, adding landscaping features, things like that. So we were advised to add that so that we could, it would be an easier process to add landscaping elements in that empty parcel as we continue to develop the project. The goal is to beautify that corner.
Thank you.
Commissioner Paul?
Okay, the only question I got is, will your facility will endanger the health, safety, morals, or peace of the general welfare of the surrounding neighborhood or no?
I'm sorry, say it again.
So I said, will your facility will endanger the peace, morals, or the safety of the surrounding households?
Will our facility endanger the peace, morals, or
that's-
safety of the community? Is that the question?
Yes.
Absolutely not. If our facility ever did endanger the community, we would lose our license. We would lose our accreditation. It would not be tolerated by the state of California and by our licensing agency.
And how big is the facility, the one on Union Avenue? Is it the same size or the
The
smaller?
one on Union Avenue is about 3,000 square feet.
Mhm.
Okay. This building is being built in response to the great need for substance use disorder treatment in Fairfield. Our waiting list is long for people trying to get into our facility because people want to heal. And this facility will facilitate that process. It will make our community safer.
Commissioner Greavy?
Thank you. These are, I've got a couple of questions, and really they're for the public. They're
Sure.
to help appease them if possible. You said that there's traffic from employees between 10 and 6.
No. There's no traffic.
Well, okay. that people will be coming and going between the hours of 10 and 6.
No.
But what I had understood at one point was that you have 24-hour care,
We have staff on site
24 hours a day.
24 hours a day, and they work, shifts are basically 6 to 2, 2 to 10, 10 to 6. And during those shift changes, you'll have cars leaving the parking lot and coming into the parking lot. Between those periods, you will not have people coming and going unless someone comes during the day for admission. But between the hours of 10 and 6, there should be no movement on the property at all.
And what, thank you, and what prevents someone from walking out the door?
Someone could walk out the door because we're not a prison or a jail. What prevents someone from walking out the door is their counselors and our recovery technicians who work with them. If they want to leave the facility, we have a discharge process. If they want to walk out the door, it's called leaving treatment against medical advice. So when someone expresses the desire to leave, we do a case conference with the patient. We assess their motivation. If they want to leave, we go through a formal discharge process. The patient completes a survey that surveys the quality of our treatment program, and then we arrange for transportation by family or some other authority to come and pick them up.
Okay. Being the kind of person I am,
Sure.
I have walked out of the hospital before when they said it's not the right thing to do and you need to fill out this paperwork. I didn't fill out the paperwork. I said, I'm out of here. Can you encounter that problem, and do you have a solution to it if someone chooses to leave?
If someone chooses to leave and not go through the discharge process, like in the hospital, there's nothing we can do. It doesn't happen very often.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
For example, for our people, the people that we treat, often if they leave against medical advice, it means they're returning to the street. They're returning to homelessness. They don't have a place to go. They're returning to hunger. And they have every incentive to remain in the program, because if they remain in the program, it's a pathway to employment, to housing, and to stable food.
Thank you.
Commissioner Wordman?
Good evening. I first have a comment to the audience. I think it's absolutely wonderful that we have children in the chambers. And I hope one day that these children here will be sitting here as mayor and council people for the city of Fairfield. And also that we should build out chambers that have family-friendly seating so that we can encourage our community to participate, because not everyone can leave their children at home. So I applaud you for bringing your children tonight, and I love to hear the noise, the screaming. I absolutely think it's wonderful. So that was my public comment. You mentioned that the proponents of this is because of fear. So we as commissioners are limited to our findings and what we can do. But you have a chamber full of the community. How are you going to address their fears? What are you going to do to reach to these communities, to these citizens, to subdue that fear? How are you going to work with our community? Are you going to be a company that, if this is approved, you just come in and then ignore their comments that are coming tonight? What is your plan for that?
I have an open door policy. My office is 609 Jefferson Street, downtown Fairfield. And I welcome anyone at any time to come have dialogue with me and with us. I was invited to a community forum at Parkway Community Church, where we went in to address the questions from the community. We spent about an hour and a half or an hour and a half there talking to the community. And when that conversation ended, I left an open invitation to do it again. I am a community-minded person. We do what we do because we have a social mission. We care about Fairfield, we care about our community, and we do whatever we need to do and whatever we can do to help our friends and neighbors not only embrace the challenge of substance use disorder, but also to understand what treatment is and how we can help these people heal, and what we actively do to keep our community safe when these people are in treatment. So I'm available anytime for conversation.
Any questions?
I just have one, and it's going back to site planning, because I just want to make sure to get some clarity around expansion opportunity. I heard you say that if you did want to make some adjustments to the property, as far as maybe adding something or whatever adjustments outside of beautification, you would have to go through the state first. So does that mean that you would go through the state and they will approve you already, and then, or maybe I should be asking this to staff, I'm not sure, but will the state, if they approve like maybe another story, you would go through them first and then it would tie the city's hands? And do you plan on in the future possibly expanding?
We have no plans for expanding at that location, and the 30-year deed restriction is a condition of the grant that we received to build the facility. And so we have very well-defined obligations to the state to provide the services that we do. And their interest is to assure that the $15 million that they're giving us is used in the way that they intended. And so they don't want to see that investment that the state is making in Fairfield squandered by any short-sighted or poorly thought-out expansions that would undermine the quality of the treatment that we're doing. So if we were going to expand, the process that we would pursue, and I say we because I'm 63 years old and I have no plans to expand before I retire, the staff at Archway would have to get together, envision what they wanted to do. They would do go through a community process, discuss with the community what the intentions were. The state will require that. They would draft a proposal to the state with very well-defined objectives for the expansion. Then the state will approve it or not approve it. And then once the state approves it, then it comes back to the planning group, just like any other process.
But right now, the deed, thank you for that, but right now, the deed restriction does hold you to where we are today, the plans that you see here before you minus beautification.
Please prevent me from adding to that facility.
Okay, thank you.
We don't need the extra work.
Just as a note, could that be added as a condition of approval?
Which?
A restriction of expansion?
I don't know. I look to the city attorney to answer that question specifically, but I will note that your entitlement does not authorize any expansion. It authorizes exactly what is proposed to, most likely to
It's not a conditional use
preclude
permit,
in advance something that isn't, essentially isn't in front of you that would otherwise be allowed by the zoning. I think I'll let the city attorney conclude my thoughts, but I suspect that that's probably not something that's within your purview.
Yeah.
I agree with that. It's not necessary because it's already restricted by the entitlement before you.
Thank you.
And I just want to note, but after the speaker ends, I just wanted to clarify that this is not just the opening of the public comment, but the opening of the public hearing,
Oh, I'm sorry.
in case that
misspoke.
wasn't officially made clear before.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification. Just a couple of other quick questions. Number of staff members, approximate?
41, how many staff? This is our chief operating officer.
Number of staff at any given time, not necessarily total.
On any given time?
given time, 12 to 15?
Okay. So the parking of 19 more than covers
Oh, it's
the
adequate,
needs
yeah.
for the staff.
Yeah.
Are there any outdoor activities by patients?
Are there any outdoor activities by patients?
Do you do exercises, walks?
The design includes a rather large courtyard, so that, and the goal was to bring the outside into the facility. So when we say, will there be any outside activity? I'm going to say probably.
Well,
you don't
I'm
have
speaking
recess.
outside the structure, so if it's inside the courtyard, that's not an
No,
issue.
what I'm saying is, if there is activity on the grounds, it'll always be supervised, right? There will be no unsupervised outside activity.
Is that a normal course of what you do as part of the treatment plan? To take walks or whatever?
Yeah, sometimes, yep.
Okay.
Yep, our outpatient program is going to play softball on Saturday. You know, that's an outpatient program. You know, these folks aren't in a residential treatment
Right.
facility, but recreation, one of the goals of treatment is to help our patients learn how to regulate their emotions in healthy ways, how to exercise, how to take advantage of fresh air, how to experience their bodies in healthy ways. And so all of that is a part of the treatment plan. But again, it's not unsupervised, and it's not without therapeutic intent.
And under normal situations, all intake patients and exiting patients are supervised to another location at their release. They're escorted in and escorted out,
Correct.
barring some of the other things
We do
talked
not
about.
discharge to the street.
Right, okay. In your other locations, do you have another location of this size in another community?
We have a 45-bed facility in Napa County, in Napa.
And can you speak to any issues that you might have had?
We have no issues. So understand, I have about a 280-page policy manual. In the policy manual includes such things as de-escalation training. If we have a zero tolerance for mischief among our patients, they're there to heal. They're not there to be resentful. They're not there to make demands. They're not there to be entitled. And so if a patient does not conform to the community norms, we discharge them. And it's called an administrative discharge. So for example, if someone is, one of the norms, they don't use profanity. They don't posture. They don't bring street talk into the facility. They don't peacock around. You know, all that stuff is watched. If they do have that behavior, they go on to they develop a behavioral contract, and a behavioral contract would look something like this. I hereby agree that I will use my inside voice at all times. I will refrain from sleeping past the wake-up time, and I will agree to appear for my group therapy session on time. If I do not do this, I will agree to administrative discharge. They sign it. It goes into their patient chart. The recovery techs and the therapists monitor it, and we proceed from there. It's a positive discipline environment.
Okay, thank you for indulging with us for these many questions. You're welcome to take a seat, and we'll move forward into, do I need to officially open? again?
Chairperson Matthews,
Yes.
can we do a 5-minute recess and then proceed with public comments, please?
Certainly. We'll adjourn for 5 minutes. James Halliburton, as an applicant, did not have an opportunity to speak. Is there anything further you would like to add?
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Dr. James Halliburton with BRW Architects. We're the architect for this facility. We're the architects for this facility. And I can answer technical questions of fencing and things if they're, but I feel like they may have been answered previously. So if you'd like me to answer any of those in more clarity, I'm happy to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
What we'll do now is I'll read two names, and then we'll go on to online calls. So be prepared for the second person to come forward so that we can give everybody an opportunity to speak and use our time most efficiently. So we'll start with Frank Brandeis, followed by Tommy Martin. Frank, can you come forward? Okay. How about Tommy? Is it Martin or Marlon? Martin. And then following Tommy, we'll have Melinda Beckham.
Just like to address y'all. Good evening. First of all, as a concerned citizen, plus I go to St. Stephen's. I look at our city, and we see people in need all around our city. There's a lot of people being dropped off by police departments from other areas, dropping all these unhoused people here. They're not committing too much of a hassle to your welfare, and when you go to the store or anywhere else. And all these people have mental issues, and they also have drug issues. So when we look at people going into a residence like this to get help, you have more people on the street that can do you harm than you would somebody going into a facility. So if you look around your neighborhood and the people around you, you will see that this is not going to harm you. This is going to help somebody. And when you're looking at it from that standpoint, no one should be in a position where they can't get help. And there's a lot of people out here that need the help. And I'm in support of this 100%.
Thank you.
Okay.
Madeline, and then after Madeline, we'll take a call online.
Hello. First time public speaking. So I'm a local resident of Peachtree. I've been there 32 years now. I have lived in the complexes, and we are as well homeowners. I have 2 young children that I'm worried about, plus my elderly neighbors, as well as the single females and single males that do live in the neighborhood. That this is a scary situation, as well as there is so many homeless people in the area that do need help. But my concern is my neighbors and my neighborhood that we have lived there for so long, as well as a lot of people that need to go to these things have 2 options, jail or rehab. And if they were in the middle of a manic episode, leaving the rehab, they're in the neighborhood. What is the biggest solution to that? Okay, thank you, guys.
Thank you. Can we have the back room help us with an online?
Yes, we have
One hand's up that I see.
Caitlin Weather.
Please repeat, we didn't quite hear that.
Catherine Weather.
Go ahead, Kathleen, we can hear you. Can you hear us?
Hear you as well.
Please
Are you
repeat.
able to hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you so much. My name is Catherine Weathers Belger, and I'm counsel for St. Stephen. And I just felt that I appreciate this opportunity to speak on behalf of my client. I am managing partner of Dillard and King Limited, a firm with offices in Washington, D.C., Chicago, Atlanta, New York, but of course, California. And so I have been counsel for St. Stephen, the church, as well as the Community Partnership Corporation, since the inception of this project and probably a little before. And I just want to kind of speak to a few things. We are very clear about the understated and understood parameters. We understand the operational conditions and activity that has been discussed and the permitted use. But this fear factor and other community concerns has continued to arise, and I would like to take this opportunity on behalf of my client, St. Stephen, to just briefly talk about some of those issues, and I think it will allay some of the concerns of those persons who are here in the chamber and those persons in the community who may read this transcript or have access to this hearing afterward. So St. Stephen is the landlord, and they are not going anywhere. It is their land, and they intend to continue to be concerned. And my client, St. Stephen, has from the beginning not only been concerned about their property, but has consistently been concerned about the community effects. And so I'm going to speak a little bit about that. We're just happy to address those concerns about security and community crime, and just help to provide a little bit of insight regarding research and understanding related to the data-driven exploration and responses that highlight the broader overarching issues about community well-being. So Archway has consistently, and we have been also in connection, and I've worked with Kevin for a long, long time now. Archway has consistently engaged in open discussions with St. Stephen to address these community concerns and demonstrate their commitment to safety and security from the project's inception. And that has also been St. Stephen's permission and St. Stephen's importance. They've also really been concerned about this. Security measures. Archway has outlined clear plans for comprehensive security measures, including internal security to ensure the safety of clients and staff, the perimeter security to protect the neighboring areas, and maintain the safety of the community overall. And that is also, as St. Stephen abuts this project, that's the church's concern and the community partnership's concern as well. So we have always intended to have a collaborative approach to this. The project has from the
Excuse me for interrupting. Can you wrap up in the next 30 seconds, please?
Yes. We've talked about vested security. We've talked about enhanced community services. We've talked about the economic benefits of the project, ongoing engagement and interaction with police in the surrounding community. We feel like this project will help with reduction of crime. We feel like the overall community health improvement outweighs any negligible negativity. We understand that there's educational opportunities and opportunities to partner with law enforcement. We feel that this will add property value and stability, and that this entire program from its inception, as well as the underlying contract, is tailored to create an environment that really should reduce the fear factor. That concludes my comments, and thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Dan Deckard, followed by Joy Jones.
Well, greetings, commissioners. I realize after hearing your opening that what I have to say is pretty pointless, but I'm going to say it anyway, okay? My name is Dan Deckard. I'm the lead pastor of Parkway Community Church at 2397 Heath Drive. We're right across the street from where this proposed Archway Recovery Services facility is going to be built. We believe, and I speak on behalf of our pastors, our elders, and our deacons, we believe that this program, or should I say, that such a program is necessary. And the leadership of Archway, I have talked to Wanda and David, and they have been clear, they have been honest, forthright in my conversations with them. However, that said, what became clear in our last meeting with Archway Recovery Services, a meeting held on May 28th, is that, and these are the parts that you haven't heard tonight, is that 40% of those housed by this service are there by way of legal mandate, a condition of parole or probation. As such, they are not there of their own free volition. In that same meeting was also divulged that Archway, by Archway, that the Recovery Services does in fact house a percentage of registered sex offenders. In an email I received today from a council person regarding the admission of registered sex offenders, this was stated, and I quote, "With regards to the sex offenders, he," the city manager, whom I respect, had a conversation with Kevin Phillips, he's the executive director of Archway, and was told that it would not be likely possible for them to outright deny probationary 260 sex offenders. Let me restate that. It would not be likely possible for them to outright deny probationary sex offenders, 260 sex offenders, due to the DHCS, that is California Department of Healthcare Services, funding they're receiving. In other words, they won't be funded. Kevin did indicate a willingness to not accept them for 6 months or maybe a year or so, so the neighborhood can see how they function as an operator. Point, people with this struggle will be here eventually. Do we need a place for people to seek rehabilitation for past struggles? Absolutely. But as I speak, I have 120 elementary school children in my church right now in our summer programs. We have youth that meet at our church building Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. We run an elementary tutoring center throughout the school year. We literally serve hundreds of kids, not more than 100 feet from this proposed site. Moreover, a public school is just less than 1,300 feet away. Parkway is not in opposition to recovery services. We support recovery services. We are, however, in opposition to the composition of the clientele housed by this proposed recovery service. We believe children are at risk. While we applaud the plan to help, we cannot do so at the expense of the most vulnerable young children. My hope, even though I realize this is a pointless appeal, is that someone will listen.
Thank you for your comments. Joy, and then I'll ask the back office to see, I see no hands up, but if there's anybody online, please let us know.
Good evening. My name is Joy, and I am a homeowner in the city of Fairfield. I stand before you today. First of all, I would like to say that I believe what the project is attempting to do is a great needed service. However, I am in opposition of it being next door to my home. There are plenty of areas where this project could have been built, and I just don't feel like there was due diligence in this company or project doing that work, my opinion. Right? I feel like it was money motivated on both sides, and that's a business. I understand that. I also understand from the comments made here today that your hands are tied, so our comments today are pointless, but our voice is not. We have small children, we have elders, and I feel like the meeting that Archway was open to coming, they were very pacifying. And of course, anybody trying to sell their business is going to say what they did right, but I work in this field every day. I have 7, count them, 7 degrees, and one of them is a social worker. I've worked with drug addicts, addiction medicine, I've worked with AIDS, HIV, post and pre-testing. I'm very educated in this, so I can't be pacified by your strict script. I know what it's like. And anybody that's going into any rehabilitation center based on something that has been charged for them to do and not their own willingness, it is not always successful. And the risk definitely outweighs the good. Every day I see these people, meaning drug addicts, mental health patients, leave hospitals where there is treatment available for them and services. I would also like to point this out, that there's many people who saying how good this is going to be for Fairfield. This project is not just for Fairfield residents, so don't be fooled. Do not be fooled by the pretty picture that's being painted. Just as someone said that the police dropping off people from other cities into our city, them same people are being welcomed into this program. So it's not just for Fairfield. So I think that that's also a blanket statement that should not have been made. Now the residents here, property taxpayers, now we're gonna have to worry about securing our residents, securing our families, and securing our homes. Again, it's a great project. Do it somewhere else. Thank you.
I see no hands raised, so we'll move forward to Cornelius Need, followed by Roderick Fernandez.
Good evening to everyone in the chamber and to all of you. I am the senior pastor of St. Stephen, no S, St. Stephen CME Church here in Fairfield. I just have a few points that I want to raise for our hearing. One, we are committed to having a reduction in crime as a result of this facility being built. Contrary to common concerns, research indicates that the presence of rehabilitation centers often correlates with a reduction in local crime rates by providing access to treatment and support. These facilities have been found to actually help reduce substance-related offenses and to improve public safety. Additionally, we're committed to furthering and deepening our relationship with the local law enforcement to ensure that we have enough support from the city of Fairfield to continue on in solidifying the fact that we're not going to have the crime that everyone is anticipating. And we too, as St. Stephen CME Church, are committed to our young people as well. And so we service quite a few young people. We partner with the Boy Scouts of America, where we charter 4 separate units, one of which meets at our space. And we are not at all concerned with the safety of our children because we know that a facility of this nature is not going to threaten their safety whatsoever. Now I defer the rest of my time to someone else. Thank you.
Thank you. Roderick, and then followed, still seeing no hands, followed by Sandra Frost.
Hi, I'm Roderick. I'm a homeowner. I live in the cottages where the facility is supposed to be built. And I have 3 kids. I have a 10-year-old, I have a 16-year-old, and I have an 18-year-old. And for them to build this rehabilitation center over there to a point where I would have to watch my kids 24/7, I don't want to have to do that. I mean, right now, as of right now, they haven't even built the facility yet. We've got break-ins already around the area. What more when they build this facility and they have people that can just walk in and out without anything. And he says that he can guarantee that nothing can happen. Nobody can guarantee anything can happen. If it happens, that's what you're gonna wait for something to happen to anybody else's kids. I don't want that to happen. I mean, I'm happy that they're doing this, but do it somewhere else, not around our neighborhood. You know.
Thank you for your comments. Sandra, followed by Edward Adam.
Good evening, everyone. I am Sandria Frost, and I am also, I know my St. Stephen's family is looking at me crazy because I am one that don't like to public speak or get in front of people, but I'd be remiss if I didn't speak on this project's behalf. On February the 3rd, 1994, I was one of those people. I attended one of the projects similar to Archway, and but for the grace of a loving God, I celebrated 30 years of recovery. In that project, I learned the tools to better myself and become a productive member of society. As he was saying, there we got the skills such as learning about ourselves, learning about the addiction, learning about our mental health. We got all of these things that we needed. Some of us were mandated, some of us were not mandated, but we did have to comply. If we did not comply, then we were out of there, and it was a 24-hour facility. One of the things that it helped me with is to finding out what triggered me and what caused that addiction. It got me off of the streets. It changed my life. But for the grace of God, I have 2 granddaughters that are grown and have graduated college, never seen me drink or use a drug. I have 2 great-grandkids. One of them go to Sullivan, right up the street from where that project is going to be. And I would never put anybody that I love in danger. So this project, I think, with the help of Archway and St. Stephen's and the people of the community, if we can save 1 person, 2 people, but we're talking 62 beds that are there, we can help them to become better members of the community and restore families. So I beseech you to consider this project. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Edward, and then I still see no hands up, so we'll go on to Is it Edridge Fernandez?
Good afternoon. My name is Edward Adams. I'm a 50-year resident of Fairfield. I have watched the city grow, and I've seen things changes. This facility will help, whether you are mandated to it or volunteer to it. We need this facility to try to improve our neighborhood. And without it, the people you're saying that will be running around and everything, you will see them somewhere. If they don't get help, it's just, the deterioration will just continue to grow. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. Edridge, followed by Ed Colon. I'm sorry, I can't quite, can you make that out?
I believe it's Gladys Fernandez.
Oh, Gladys. Many apologies.
Hi, good evening, Commissioners. I am an 8-year resident of Fairfield. I live just down the block from the proposed sites. My concerns are, for one, traffic. You said that there will be 3 separate, I guess, working
shifts.
Hours that will be coming in and out of. I mean, Heath Drive is already crowded because it's right off of Air Base Parkway. And, getting out in the morning is already traffic for me. That's one. Number 2, Fairfield is a huge city. They can build somewhere else. I'm not opposed to this type of facility because, I'm a nurse myself. I understand. I've dealt with mental issues. I've had my own brother is dealing with that, drug issues. So I know what this facility can do, but just not in the neighborhood. Like especially what Joy has said, I'm just exactly what she had mentioned is all my concerns. I just want a place for my kids to be able to play outside and not be, not for the family members to be scared for, anybody coming up to them, especially what another gentleman had said about sex offenders and being mandated to be in there. What if they decide to go against medical advice and come out? So that individual will be homeless outside where we call home. And I just don't, had I known that this facility was going to be built, I would have never moved to wherever I moved. Just point blank. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Ed Colon, followed by Marshall McGee.
Hi, good evening. My name is Ed Cologne. I live at the cottages. As a matter of fact, I'm in that second building from the left there. I believe that this facility is going to bring the wrong kind of people so close to where we live. At the cottages, we have a lot of people that are senior citizens, and we have a lot of kids. And like the pastor was saying, the parents have to be fearful, and even the older people have to be fearful of these people that are going to come into this facility here. And you talk about 62? Now, that's a high number, and I'm sure there's going to be some bad apples in those numbers. I don't know what kind of ratio the gentleman mentioned at his other facilities, but I'm sure it's not 100%. Parking. They say they have parking for the staff, but what about the people who come to visit some of these people that live there or are in treatment? Right now, parking is horrible where we live. And on Heath Drive, it's going to be jam-packed. I didn't hear mention about security. They're going to have 24-hour security there, which is something I think they would need. and would, of course, make us feel safer. I do think that they do need a facility somewhere, but I just don't want it happening right next to where I live. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Good evening, Planning Commissioners. Hi, my name is Marshall McGehee, and a vested interest in safety. The proposed site for the Rehabilitation Center associated with the church's community has a vested interest as well as a personal stake in maintaining safety and being both a parishioner and surrounding community. This plan purpose desires an extra layer of oversight and committed to the standards of care and security. I would appreciate it, and thank you very much.
Thank you. I want to confirm, I see no hands raised, so we have no other people via Zoom. Our concluding speaker will be Nemo Gonzalez.
Good evening, Chair, Commissioners, staff, neighbors. I know you've seen my emails. I know you've seen my letters that I've written. And I had prepared a speech, but I scrapped it. There's bits of truth with everything that staff is saying. I did make a comment about requiring a conditional use permit. But what I'm requesting is that you reconsider making this a permitted use. What I'm saying in my letter is not that the municipal code requires it, but rather that it should. When I say that the ISM&D is making conclusions that aren't supported, what I'm getting at is how do you determine that there is no mitigation needed for sound if you didn't require the applicant to conduct a sound study, right? Those are the kinds of things that I'm saying. So the fact that the conclusions aren't changed doesn't change the fact that you're making a conclusion in that document that the city is preparing and taking on the liability for and not supporting that. I'd like to think that I'm well-versed in development. It's paid my bills for 20 years. And even I have been a little perplexed by this process. It's undeniable that I've been doing my best to reach out to staff, to try to engage with us, to hear our concerns in a manner that wouldn't require us to spend our general fund in our HOA to appeal this decision, but so I don't want to go through point by point. I brought a copy of my 2 response letters that one of them is attached in the staff report, and I have a second one on there. What I want to do is I just want to touch on some points that I saw in the staff report. I was out of the state until a couple of days ago, so I just downloaded it today. Just to sort of reiterate how things get misconstrued, how points are just not addressed. The staff report says that over several months, staff worked with the applicant team to address some of the comments. The truth is that we reached out at the beginning of October. We got some responses from the mayor, some from Mr. Feinstein, and then silence for 4 months until we got the letter. So we could have had some of these discussions prior to this hearing, but we weren't engaged how we had hoped.
Nemo, I know you've got a lot of points that you want to make. We're up at 3 minutes. Can you draw your
I'll draw a
ideas to
conclusion. I think that the development process is broken. I think that if someone like me can't understand how to sort of evaluate what's happening in my own neighborhood, even if it's required by right, if it's something that's controversial, if it's something that the city's taking on that responsibility and liability by preparing an ISM&D that could be challenged, I just don't understand why the city would not engage with us, right? I'm perplexed. Somebody said it, if I had known that this development was going in next door to me, I wouldn't have purchased my property. And finally, you know, the parishioners at St. Stephen's, they have the ability to go home at night. We don't. And so I'm asking you guys to put yourselves in our position. Would you let your grandkids spend the night with the kids that live in our neighborhood? You know, that's a real test. If you want to be good neighbors, do me a favor and change that luminaire and that light. It's like a nightclub in my bedroom. Thanks.
Thank you. And thank you also for many of you that have written emails. I can assure you that they have been read. We are now closing the public hearing portion.
Would you like to provide the applicant an opportunity for a rebuttal?
Well, I was going to ask staff, but do we do that prior to closing?
I would keep the public hearing open.
Okay.
And you can ask staff to respond to any issues that were raised.
Staff, will you please respond to any
Sure.
issues that were raised?
Most of the issues, I think the speakers recognized pertain to the operations or the occupants of the facility. So as we've mentioned, operations and who the occupants are not things that are within the purview of the Planning Commission for tonight's decision. Mr. Gonzalez mentioned a few concerns in his moments up here, particularly with the initial study, concerned that certain things weren't analyzed. So he also mentioned concern that city staff didn't hear the neighbors' concerns. So first of all, and I think this was included in your packet as a part of the attachments of comments that he had submitted going back as far as October, 6 months or so before the actual public hearing. He had provided a whole long list of comments and concerns for the neighborhood. Staff did review all of those concerns. We made a number of conditions of approval that went into the final approval. As Tendai had mentioned, staff worked with the architects to modify a number of aspects of the design of the building. The trash enclosure location was relocated. So based on the comments that we got, a number of changes were made. As far as the initial study goes, there were a lot of comments that were provided both by Mr. Gonzalez during the public review period for the initial study. So there was that, state law prescribes that period for us once we've prepared the environmental documents for members of the public to review and provide comment. He provided, I believe, an 8-page comment letter. Staff made a number of changes to the initial study, expanded some of the analysis. Some of the areas that he has concerns where he felt that there were not enough study being done. We acknowledge in the initial study that CEQA doesn't require that you study in detail everything. CEQA does allow communities to establish thresholds of significance. And unless a project exceeds that threshold of significance, the city or the community has determined that there is not a significant impact on the environment. So there were a number of areas, air quality, traffic, where there was enough analysis done to determine that the project doesn't rise above that threshold of significance. As far as noise is concerned, we have one residential use and another residential use next door to each other. The city has established a threshold of significance for noise between neighbors, that if it's a commercial use, then you upgrade that fence to a wall, to a masonry wall. So we've established that standard for noise mitigation between two users. If the use is expected to generate a high level of truck traffic, things like that, then we require an additional noise study to determine, is the city's basic 6-foot masonry wall between a commercial use and a residential, does it have to go higher? But if it's two residential uses, our threshold of significance isn't reached to trigger any additional noise mitigation there. And there's nothing about this project compared to other typical uses in a high-density residential zone. That suggests it's going to have any greater noise level than we typically get from any other higher density residential use. If we regularly get noise complaints between, from adjacent neighbors, the apartment complex is creating all this noise, the city would look to change our threshold of significance for creating those noise barriers between the two uses. We simply don't get those kinds of complaints, and therefore the city has never established a higher threshold of significance. So we've studied the things where we don't have thresholds of significance, but where there is a threshold, there were no studies done beyond the basic analysis done in the initial study. So those were the comments that we heard here. Your staff report provides a lengthy list of changes that were made in regards to the comments that we received over those 6 months at the public hearing and during the public comment period. So those are the staff response.
Good evening, everybody. Maylee Sheehan, Principal Planner for the Planning Division. I just had 2 items I wanted to add to what Dave had mentioned. There was questions earlier about the fencing. I was able to review the plans. There is proposed wrought iron decorative fencing that will go around the entire 1.77 acre property. And then I also just wanted to emphasize a couple comments regarding traffic. A vehicle miles traveled analysis was conducted by professional transportation consultants, and based on a conservative estimate of 32 employees, the analysis stated that there would be a peak AM total of 12 trips and a peak PM total of 11 trips. And that's all. I just wanted to add those 2 items.
Thank you, Maylee. Okay.
And if I could just add a comment as well. There was a comment about, being in opposition to the composition of those housed at this proposed facility. And I just wanted to reiterate that, there's limited discretion here, and that the commission and the city cannot discriminate based on the composition of those that are housed at the facility. Any restrictions must be reasonable and non-discriminatory, and this project must be treated as if it were any other similar type of application. You can't single out the type of use that's being performed at this facility.
Thank you. Okay, we're now ready to close the public hearing portion of the meeting and return it back to commissioners for deliberation. Commissioner Kennedy, do you want to start us off?
Sure. Again, I want to thank everybody for coming and sharing their comments for and opposed to the for the facility. Personally, I read every one of the comments that were sent in since I think October of 2023, as well as and I will say all the comments up until 5 o'clock this evening on Nextdoor on the thread. So they were all taken into consideration. And I'll go back to my initial comments, which are we're able to evaluate this based on zoning compliance, architectural design, site planning, and environmental review. And I never thought I'd learn so much about a burrowing owl than I have learned in the last week. But I guess I'm fortunate in that regard to continue to learn at this age. But from a design aspect, the mitigation that the applicant and the city have done with regard to the design, the swale, increasing that, the trees and adding the evergreens and that type of thing, changing the trash enclosure. Those are, all part of the architectural design, and they've made, I look at it, does the architectural design, does it affect the neighborhood negatively? From what I saw here tonight, it does not affect it negatively. Zoning compliance, it follows the zoning compliance and follows what we're allowed to look at. The site planning, you know, you look at, I looked back at the setbacks. 15 feet is required from Heath. It's actually 23 feet. From the rear on Peachtree, it's 24 feet. It only needs to be 15. The internal south is is required is 25 feet. It's actually 118 feet. And on the east side, it's 162 when it needs to be 15 feet. So from a site planning standpoint, I think it overly exceeds the requirements that are needed for this. And from an environmental review, CEQA, I know Mr. Gonzalez, thank you for providing a lot of information on this. If it was any other type of facility, you know, apartments or whatever, there'd be a lot more emphasis towards CEQA because this doesn't come close to meeting the maximum requirements for high density. So with that, I will leave that until we have further discussions, but those are what I've come up with so far. So thank you all.
Thank you, Commissioner Paul.
Yeah, I do agree with Mr. Kennedy's comments. He didn't leave anything for us. He had all the details. But I do have a question. Either Mr. James can answer it or the staff can answer it. How many, as Mr. James said, there might be 11,000 people who can make use of this kind of facility in the city. To me, Fairfield has a population of almost 120,000. 11,000 is like 10% of the total population. That looks to me very steep. If 11,000 people can make use of facilities. So I'm not sure how many more facilities like that we have in Fairfield and how many total number of beds they have. So if 11,000 people, we are only making another facility with 62 beds, that's very minimal. I mean, we should have a much bigger facility. If it can be located elsewhere, that would be much better for the community, which is in the neighborhood. If we can find a better location away from the community, a residential area, I think, in my opinion, that'd be much better for all the people who have come here, who are speaking against it. It's a good project, I mean, no doubt about it, but we must have this facility away from high residential facility. Then that's about it.
Thank you. Commissioner Greavy?
Thank you. Well, it's been an interesting evening, and I have too read every letter, email that came through, and I do appreciate them. I do believe that Archway, as a professional organization, has done an incredible job with Tendai on trying to appease and make it as comfortable as possible for the community. I do believe that their intent is to only make our community better, and that is yet to be seen. However, maybe I'm not stating that correctly because they already have a facility here, and they've clearly been doing a good job with that facility as well as the one in Napa. Without a doubt, we need the services, and it's a great opportunity for the church to be in communication and to assist in the outreach to those people that are definitely in need. So I believe that most of my concerns have been appeased, and those that haven't, only time will tell on those. But I do have a sense, if you will, that Archway has only your best interest, our community's best interest at heart.
Thank you. Commissioner Workman?
Thank you. For the 4 areas that we can rule on and have findings. I don't have any comments on that. But I do have a question for our city attorney and maybe for Mr. Feinstein as well. In the spirit of addressing all of the community's concerns, I know you've had meetings and we've read the documentation. Is it in our preview to delay a decision to allow continued conversation to make sure that some of the comments that were spoken tonight are addressed? Is that within our purview?
It's not within your purview to exercise discretion, other than what would be, a reasonable restriction. And so I'm not sure what benefit would be had by waiting for what you mean by having comments be addressed.
Well, for example, Mr. Gonzalez had some comments that he submitted previously. He wasn't able during the time to address all of those. And the outcome may be exactly the same, but just to make sure that as a city, that we're providing every opportunity for our community to have their comments, to have that back and forth dialogue. I think as staff, you are the experts, and as community, they're learning and trying to get that information and trying to articulate that, and just to make sure that they have every opportunity and then some, just because of the balance of power.
So I will say that in staff's opinion, we've worked very hard to address the concerns that are within the purview of the Planning Commission, to add conditions, to work with the applicant. As we outlined in detail in the staff report, I'm not sure if there are particular things that you feel haven't, those comments that are within your purview that haven't been addressed yet. From staff standpoint, we've done what we can to make those recommendations for you to consider.
Can I just interject here? The decision of the Planning Commission could be appealed to City Council, correct?
That is correct. So, if there are areas that the community still feels need further addressing, they do have that avenue to seek for the City Council to be that final decision maker, giving further time in that interim period for if there's additional issues that are identified in a subsequent appeal, or if the applicant wishes to continue to work with the neighborhood while waiting an appeal. If there is an appeal that's filed, that gives that opportunity also. So that's another avenue for the neighbors.
Thank you. I have no further comments, other than the fact that I hope what the applicant has said, that you will follow through on that and continue engagement with the churches and the community.
Thank you, Vice Chair Evans.
Thank you. I didn't give much personal opinion. Earlier, I wanted to just stick to what we had to evaluate, and by all means, everything that was in our purview to evaluate does meet the standards and the criteria. I will say on a personal note that I love the engagement with everybody showing up on both sides. California is having a homeless problem, as we all know, and a lot of that has to do with addiction. In response to that, the state government is taking away the local ability for people to, for your local councilmen, planning commissioners to say no to a lot of projects. Because when we say that we don't want the homelessness in our communities, we also turn around and we say we don't want large-scale apartment units. We don't want rehab facilities in our communities either. So in response to that, you have what you're seeing here tonight, where we're not at liberty to just turn down a project because we don't feel like it's the right location. We have to go by the zoning ordinance. So if you feel passionately about this issue, you need to contact your local assemblyman, because this is a state issue. And it's not just our city that's losing control of being able to say what we want where. It's a matter of the state, and it's a matter of complications with everyone saying, not in my backyard. With that said, I do want to address the fact that last year we proudly approved an ordinance saying that it was an ordinance making sure that we could have more transparency with groups that were operating rehabs and group homes in the community. Some of you may be familiar with the fact that nonprofit organizations, even churches, sometimes come in and they say, we're going to open a group home. We're going to start it right here in this 4-bedroom house, and they may have 8 people or 10 people in a home, and they're calling it a group home. And sometimes the city has no idea that that is happening. So we passed an ordinance last year so we can get more transparency. With that said, there's a facility in this same neighborhood that's 800 feet away that we have no idea what's going on with it. We have no idea who's being housed there. We have no idea if it's even in operation. That's what I heard earlier. Correct me if I'm wrong. And it's 800 feet away. Now, what's going to end up happening is that when this facility moves in, that's this really nice complex. There's been a lot of publicity around it. If anything goes wrong, everybody's going to look at this facility first. So as a result, they are going to have more of an obligation to make sure that their program is within bounds and that it's not causing a problem in a community. Because of the amount of publicity and because of the transparency of this group, they're going to have more of an obligation to make sure that their program runs correctly and it's not a neighborhood nuisance. What about the rehab or the group home that's 800 feet away? That's happening in multiple neighborhoods. I've seen it. And they're opening up in homes. So a lot of people right there in the neighborhood don't even know who's staying there, what kind of programs operating, what kind of oversight the tenants have. So again, I really enjoy seeing everyone out here so we can get a better idea of how to facilitate change for whatever side you find yourself on. And lastly, I do want to say that sex offenders are rated in tiers, and there are only some of them that have residential restrictions. So when you heard the city attorney say, well, we can't be discriminatory, it's on the probation and parole officers to make sure that the sex offenders that they stay registered and that they are living in areas according to what they've been governed by with the rules. Because if you look up the laws, sex offenders is in tiers. Not every sex offender has a residential regulation where they can't live next to a school or a park. So I just wanted to clarify that, and, hopefully you guys will, get civically engaged with the state as well as your local officials. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Vice Chair Evans. I just wanted to conclude and echo the comments that your voices are listened to and heard. I sensed a lot of sort of resignation that there's nothing, that your comments don't really matter. Whichever way we vote on this, they're taken into consideration, but as many have already identified, there are certain regulations that we are bound by, and I echo Vice Chair Evans' encouragement to continue to be involved. It's my opinion that Planning Commission is the truest form of democracy. We're real people, real neighbors, talking about real problems in our real community. And so we thank you for your involvement. With that, unless there are any other comments from staff, I would like to ask the commissioners to see if there is a motion they would like to put forward.
I'll go ahead and make a motion on PC 2024-03 denying the appeal and affirming the zoning with the modified listed conditions for denying the appeal.
Just for clarification, are you adding additional?
No,
but
the
just
ones that are
as-
listed as stated in our.
Yes. And is there a second?
I second.
Just to add, the resolution also asked for the staff recommendation to adopt the mitigated negative declaration. Has that been included in the
Yes.
motion?
Yes, thanks.
Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Okay, are we good to continue, or do commissioners wish a break? Okay, let's move on to item C. Our final item tonight is item C, a review and discussion of the draft greenhouse gas inventory for the city's general plan update and related climate action plan, and a review of proposed greenhouse gas reduction target. Our presenter is Jesse Hernandez. Please continue.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
can we wait like 1 minute
Yeah,
for
sure.
clearance?
Oh, that makes sense.
Zoom did not work. The password does not exist. There were 3 of us that tried to log on to Zoom, and it doesn't exist. So I just wanted to let you know.
Thank you.
Thank you. But I think they probably went on the wrong one, because I was getting texts from people on that were watching it, so.
We certainly had one person, so it was, the evidence we have was, and there were, I saw at least
There
4
were a
people
number
online at multiple points. Yeah.
Okay, Jesse, please go forward.
Good evening, commissioners and folks joining us tonight. My name is Jessie Hernandez. I'm the Associate Planner for the Planning Division of the Community Development Department, and I am project managing Fairfield Forward 2050. This project consists of a general plan update, a climate action plan, and a program environmental impact report. Today, we have 2 of our Diet and Bhatia consultants who will present and reacquaint you all with the climate action plan. We will review a greenhouse gas emissions inventory and proposed strategies for reducing emissions. There will be opportunity for you all to ask questions and share your input on other ways we can further reduce emissions. Our consultant, Mayu Tanaka, will present, and our other consultant, Allison Moore, will assist with facilitation. So now I'll hand it over to Mayu.
Good evening, Honorable Chair Matthews and Planning Commissioners. My name is Mayu Tanaka, and I am a Senior Associate at Diet Bhatia. Tonight, I will be presenting on the city's current and projected greenhouse gas emissions and hope to prompt some discussion about priorities for greenhouse gas reduction strategies to include in the Climate Action Plan. The presentation will be structured into 3 sections. First, I will provide some background information about the purpose and benefits of the CAP to provide a basic understanding of what we are trying to achieve and why. Then I will present the greenhouse gas inventory to show where we are now compared to the targets for where we need to be in the future. And that will lead into an overview of priority reduction strategies that have the most impact on reducing emissions toward the CAP targets. So firstly, the purpose and benefits. There are three key changes in regulations that underline the need for a climate action plan. The most important of these is Assembly Bill 1279, passed in 2022, that codifies the state's goal from Executive Order B5518 to achieve statewide carbon neutrality by 2045, which is both lower and sooner than the previous target assumed for 2050. This means the state and local climate action plans will have to be more aggressive to reach this goal. Large electric utilities like PG&E have continually been required to provide cleaner electricity, and the 100% Clean Energy Act of 2018, or Senate Bill 100, now requires all retail sales electricity to be from renewable and zero carbon energy by 2045. This would virtually eliminate all electricity emissions in the future. And to take advantage of this change, Executive Order N7920 from 2020 outlines the state's goals to transition the transportation sector to zero-emission vehicles, or ZEVs. In particular, all new sale passenger cars and trucks would be ZEVs by 2035, along with all operation of off-road vehicles and equipment where feasible. By 2045, this would extend to all operations for medium and heavy-duty vehicles where feasible. The California Air Resources Board, or CARB, has responded to this order by establishing the pathways to achieve these goals, including regulations that affect the sale and operations of vehicles in California. We will talk about the effect of these later in the presentation. The main objective of the Climate Action Plan is to reduce greenhouse gases, which we know to be the driver of a whole slew of climate change impacts, from drought to heat waves to storms and flooding. California has been making a deliberate effort since 2006 to decrease its emissions, and so far, the state has been on track to meet its goals. For example, the state achieved its goal to reduce emissions to 1990 levels by 2020, but more will definitely need to be done to continue this downward trajectory. Specifically, statewide emissions need to be 40% below 1990 levels by 2030, and carbon neutrality is supposed to be 85% below 1990. The reason carbon neutrality isn't 100% is to account for remaining emissions from hard-to-reduce sectors, as well as technological limitations, and the state has a plan to offset this remainder. So that plan is the 2022 scoping plan developed by CARB, which outlines the actions that the state needs to take to reduce emissions in all sectors. Unlike previous versions of the scoping plan, the latest version also accounts for carbon sequestration and removal from natural and working lands in order to feasibly achieve carbon neutrality. These offsets are more significant and noticeable at the statewide level, so while urban forests should continue to be a priority for cities, we have not accounted for carbon sequestration and removal at the local level. And while the scoping plan lays out state actions, it also provides guidance for local governments to align with the state's climate objectives. The 2022 scoping plan especially emphasizes local climate action plans as the main way to demonstrate alignment. This is particularly important because adopting a CEQA-qualified greenhouse gas reduction strategy allows the city to use it for streamlining future development projects. So now that I have laid out what a CAP is working toward, this next section includes some data points about the current and projected future level of citywide greenhouse gas emissions and the specific local reduction targets that align with the state. We have prepared a baseline inventory for 2020, which is the most recent year for which we had complete and available data for all sectors included in the inventory. This is also a good benchmark year because it aligns with the 2020 target year for AB 32. The baseline inventory came out to be about 687,000 metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalent in 2020, which comes out to be about 5.9 metric tons per capita. The biggest contributor by far, which you see in red, is from on-road vehicle emissions, and the next largest contributors are from energy consumption in blue of electricity and natural gas. We prepared two future scenarios for 2050, with and without the general plan. In both cases, emissions are expected to decrease from 2020 as a result of state-level actions that are already underway and would take effect without the support of local action. For example, this includes SB 100's requirement for 100% clean electricity, renewable natural gas standards that apply to gas delivered by PG&E, and Title 24 standards that would increase building energy efficiency of new construction and alterations. The projections also account for transportation sector changes in fuel economy and regulations affecting heavy-duty truck emissions, but do not include the effect of Executive Order N7920 for transitioning nearly all of the transportation sector to zero-emission vehicles. But we will discuss this when we get to the reduction strategies. Overall, we are projecting a decrease from 5.9 metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalent per capita in 2020 to 3.7 in 2050 under the general plan, or slightly lower to 3.6 without the general plan due to a lower amount of growth. The good news is that the current downward trajectory is moving in the right direction and is on track to meet climate goals in the short term, but significant additional reductions will be needed to align with the state's carbon neutrality goal. The 2030 goal of 6.0 metric tons per capita is a well-established target that continues to align with SB 32 and is supported by CARB. On the other hand, the cap will need a long-term target that aligns with carbon neutrality by 2045. We have determined a locally appropriate target based on data from CARB's 2022 scoping plan that includes only the same applicable sectors as Fairfield's greenhouse gas inventory. For example, we excluded carbon sequestration and removal. This comes out to be 1.0 metric tons per capita by 2050, assuming that carbon neutrality is met and maintained by 2045. As shown in this chart, there's a significant gap between the target for 2050 and the general plan projected trajectory, meaning that we are not on track for the long term and would need to reduce emissions from 3.7 metric tons per capita to 1.0. So how will the city achieve these emissions? In this final section, I will present 2 slides that frame the priority sectors and primary strategies that have the greatest effect toward achieving the proposed target for 2050. The 2 biggest opportunities for reducing the city's emissions are to address the largest contributors and implement actions that have the most impact and over which the city has control. In particular, this involves 3 sectors: transportation, natural gas, and solid waste. As you can see in this pie chart, on-road vehicles continue to make up a majority of total annual emissions in 2050, followed by natural gas and solid waste. CARB recommends that cities prioritize actions in their caps that support the state's efforts to transition to ZEVs, reduce vehicle miles traveled, and eliminate natural gas use from the built environment. In addition to this recommendation, we have also added solid waste because there is a substantial opportunity to build on the state's SB 1383 short-lived climate pollutant strategy and the efforts to reduce organic waste and improve waste management. To adjust these sectors, there are a few actions that have the most impact on reductions and that the city can take to support the state's efforts and align with the statewide trajectory toward carbon neutrality. First and foremost, tackling the transportation sector. Regulations like advanced clean cars are already requiring increasing proportions of new sales to be zero-emission vehicles to reach the goals set by EO N7920. But transitioning the entire sector will also depend on the availability of infrastructure that supports zero-emission vehicle use, namely EV chargers. According to an EV charging infrastructure assessment by the California Energy Commission, the state will need to install about 1 million new public and shared private EV chargers from 2022 to 2030 to support transition of light-duty zero-emission vehicles. Cities will have to do their share to support zero-emission vehicle deployment by creating EV-friendly ecosystems with adequate EV charging infrastructure. Likewise, the city can support electrification of off-road equipment such as landscaping and construction equipment through best practices. Electrification will also apply to buildings, specifically replacing natural gas with electricity. Title 24 requirements already require this to some degree, but strategies may need to be more aggressive to meet the 2050 target, such as requiring all new buildings to be carbon neutral. And though the change is more modest, increasing the city's solid waste diversion goal, which is currently 50% as required by AB 939, to match the state's level of solid waste diversion of 75% per AB 341, would substantially reduce solid waste emissions and help to offset future growth in population. With these primary reduction strategies, citywide total emissions in 2050 could be reduced from 3.7 metric tons per capita to 1.4, which is significantly closer to achieving the target of 1.0 metric tons per capita by 2050. So in the next few slides, I will provide some high-level examples of actions that support the primary strategies and some considerations for choosing which options are the most appropriate or how aggressive they may need to be. These examples are in line with the priority areas recommended for cities by CARB. I would like to note that this is not a comprehensive list of strategies, which will be fully developed, quantified, and evaluated for your consideration in the draft CAP. Tonight, I would instead like to ask for your confirmation on the proposed reduction targets and general direction regarding the primary strategies to guide us as we draft the CAP. So with that in mind, the first primary strategy is to create a ZEV-friendly ecosystem. Specifically, how can the city increase the number of EV chargers in the city? Some considerations to help prioritize decisions include how to increase the ability to charge EVs at home, such as with shared chargers in multifamily buildings. And another is providing publicly accessible chargers at central and popular destinations as well as workplaces. And lastly, moving toward providing EV chargers ubiquitously so that they would be as easily accessible as a gas station, with effective fast charging stations available when you need it. Though it is noted that this approach may be costly and more of a secondary priority to consider again in the future. Some ways to get there include developing a citywide ZEV readiness plan, which might include components like converting local government fleets, installing EV chargers at public facilities, and consumer education. A plan like this would also be a central place to coordinate and track progress on related efforts that may already be underway, such as the EV Charger Pilot Program, which the city is partnering on with the Solano Transportation Authority to install 57 new EV chargers. Another way is through development standards in the zoning code or incentives. This might be streamlining permits or waiving permit fees for projects that provide a certain level of EV chargers, such as those that exceed the minimum number already required under Title 24. Preferential parking policies, such as reserving desirable parking spots or loading zones for EV use, are also a common approach that could be leveraged. The next focus is on continuing to reduce VMT. That is, the city will need to limit vehicle emissions in the immediate term until all on-road vehicles become zero emission. In particular, the CAP would address new strategies other than land use, sustainable mobility, and other policies in the general plan update or other plans. In the case of these examples, we have suggested ideas for specific programs or a zoning approach. Some examples include developing a mandatory or voluntary commute trip reduction program, leveraging existing partnerships with major employers and destinations like schools and medical centers. This could be developed from the employer-based trip reduction program to reduce traffic congestion already in Section 11.14 of the Municipal Code. Another is parking pricing and demand management. Reducing or eliminating required parking minimums could expand on the similar state requirement already under AB 2097 that reduces parking near transit. This strategy may also respond to the land use and transportation changes envisioned by the general plan update as the city continues to encourage multimodal transportation. And last but not least is the question about how to decarbonize buildings by replacing natural gas appliances and, particularly in the short term, reducing energy consumption overall. Some priorities to consider are discouraging natural gas in new construction, requiring heat pumps to be electric when installing AC systems or otherwise replacing the heat pumps, and encouraging buildings to make the necessary improvements to be ready for installation of electric appliances in the future, as well as ready to support EVs. Some ways to get there are to start a benchmarking program and setting performance standards. This expands on an existing state-required reporting program under AB 802 collected by the California Energy Commission and would help to track building energy performance to potentially trigger renovations to replace natural gas systems. There's also a potential opportunity for data sharing with neighboring jurisdictions and the Bay Area Regional Energy Network, or BayREN. Another way could be to offer owners a menu of options that increase energy efficiency and reduce emissions to meet building performance standards. For example, third-party systems such as Greenpoint Rated, LEED, and others have developed rubrics of options to allow owners to choose the most cost-effective solutions that work for them. Deploying renewable energy production and storage directly into new public projects and public facilities could also increase renewable energy infrastructure. And some examples of what this might look like are solar systems on rooftops or public parking lot canopies, or battery storage systems in municipal buildings. This effort would also be supported by identifying and removing any barriers to installing these systems due to permit or zoning requirements. And finally, incentives and rebates would help to bridge the gap as the market transforms and increase the feasibility of electrification, especially for existing buildings. PG&E, Bayron, and other partners have existing programs that could be leveraged. And all of these options should be paired with energy efficiency and conservation in the short term until electrification is more widely adopted. Exceeding Title 24 standards is one way to do this, sometimes referred to as REACH codes, which have been adopted by cities including Encinitas, Piedmont, and Carlsbad. So, in summary, there have been big regulatory changes that affect climate planning and require the city to make challenging and bold decisions, and some of those decisions will be made for the city as the state implements its scoping plan. We will continue to develop the 3 primary strategies that were presented and their implementing actions, as well as other strategies to help meet the targets, including quantifying the impact of general plan policies that will help to reduce emissions. These will be included in the fully drafted plan, which we are anticipating will be completed for public release in July. And this concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. Quite a bit of material there. A reminder to us all that we will not be taking formal action on this item tonight, but we're being asked to provide comments on the proposed GHG inventory and reduction target and proposed strategies. So let's start with questions to the consultant or to staff regarding what the plan that we've just been briefed on. Commissioner Kennedy.
My main concerns are goals they have to be realistic and achievable, right? And without a considerable amount of state and federal help, grants and such, it's going to be tough. And so far, what we've seen from Washington hasn't been the most achievable. In just with EV charging, they've spent almost $8 billion to build 8 charging stations. So for this to get to 2050, these are great goals for our city, but without that financial help to make it and get there, without the grants and things that the feds and the state have to meet their goals and make sure they're achievable as well. That's all I have to say. But great presentation. It's awesome.
So can I clarify, would you take that then and suggest as a policy direction to aggressively pursue grant funding?
Absolutely.
Commissioner Paul?
My only question is from the staff, when we are giving incentives and promoting more EV vehicles and we want to cut down the more mileage on the cars or number of miles traveled. And on the one side we say that, on the other side when we see the new road work done, instead of promoting more carpool lanes, we are changing those to express lanes and people have to pay to use those lanes. So why we are doing that? We are cutting down on carpool lanes and making those express lanes instead. So when the carpool lanes, it will definitely cut down more vehicles on the road. The people are going to share the road. So lately, I'm saying earlier at the toll plazas, carpool lanes. There used to be some discounts when you are pulling the car, but no more there. So how do you justify that step?
So I think if I'm hearing, you would want the city to support efforts by Caltrans, Solano Transportation Authority, to expand more efficient lanes and toll systems to help incentivize reducing the number of vehicles, or to promote use of electric vehicles in those lanes. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like more vehicles on the road with the gas, and it's more emission of CO2 in the atmosphere.
So again, to encourage collaboration with Caltrans. Okay. Good. Commissioner Greavy?
I probably should just pass, but I'm not going to. First off, when we're trying to reduce our carbon footprint, and we're talking about vehicle miles traveled and so on, the first thing that we could do is initiate a mandate, and I hate that word, by the way, but let's try encourage parents to utilize a bus system. I happen to be over by Rolling Hills School, and I watch these parents drive their one child in and drop it off, and there's other kids in the car. They're driving to another school to drop off another kid someplace else. If we would create, and it is possible, an efficient busing system, it would be safer, we'd use considerably less fuel, and that is one. Two, where are we going to get the electricity to charge all of these new vehicles that are going to be requiring electricity? We don't have it. The state of California now says that we're not going to use any electricity from coal starting in 2026. Much of our fuel, or much of our electricity right now in California comes from coal. Coal generates slightly less than double the amount of carbon footprint as natural gas, and yet we're going to eliminate natural gas, which is free. It isn't free to us, but it is free. We aren't damaging anything in the earth when we bring the gas out. I'm just going to stop there. I appreciate what we're trying to accomplish a great deal, but we're missing so many big pieces, and I believe we're just kicking the can. Thank you.
So to summarize, encouraging bus and the question of coal versus natural gas versus the overall things, you're just expressing dismay and concern.
We live in a state that thinks that they're going to fix the entire world, and they're bringing down these mandates. I agree, we do need to address our pollution issue, our carbon footprint. I completely agree with that. What I don't agree with is we're just pushing it from one side to the other. You know, another one that has just recently come to light is that electric vehicles actually are kicking out, their tires don't last as long because of the tremendous torque they have. They're wearing out the tires, which is burning off more rubber, and that rubber is going into our environment, into our air. Anyway.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Wordlin.
Good evening. My comment is regarding reducing the vehicle miles traveled, and to be considerate with some of the proposals that we don't punish individuals who may not be able to afford a new electric car. and are still using gas guzzlers with some of these of, demand management pricing. Because what typically happens is individuals that are, have lower income, end up paying the price for those. So just that balance. Thank you.
So would it be correct to, in terms of translating that to policy, to encourage programs to help lower income residents transition to EVs and similar kinds of greenhouse gas reducing systems?
That's one aspect of it, but the second aspect of it is to the policies that we develop consider the downstream effect on all of the citizens. And that on one hand, we may be coming up with these solutions, but then they have a negative outcome for others. And so just to keep that in mind when we're developing these programs.
Got it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Chair Evans.
I want to echo what Commissioner Greavy was saying about the bus system for the school kids, because I've noticed just since summer has hit, like, how much less traffic there is on the streets, which is insane. It's like you can actually get somewhere now. So I would like to encourage a better partnership or thought program, or better partnership or collaborative program regarding bus transportation for the students, because I know there's been a huge elimination of school bus services within our particular district. I know that Travis Unified does still provide school bus services, but we only provide them to certain students. So I don't know if there could be a partnership or some kind of incentive program between the city and the school district, the city bus system and the school district. But I just wish that there could be some cohesiveness or something somewhere regarding the bus system. And I also think that if we're looking at reducing vehicle miles traveled, because I'm not sure that we have a lot of buy-in from residents just yet with electric cars, and especially in regards to affordability and repairs. So maybe one idea is to incentivize our large employers to maybe offer some kind of transportation pickup. Maybe, everyone meets at the park and ride and they send a shuttle, because we do have a lot of industrial I'm so sorry, I'm tired. We do have a lot of industrial employers that have a number of employees working there. So if you work at like Budweiser or Jelly Belly, maybe we can incentivize them to provide a shuttle.
Thank you. Any comments on that? I just want to add in my encouragement to really make meaningful incentives for the heat pumps, for EV, for all the different efforts, and not make them income restricted. So in other words, a lot of federal programs, if you make over X amount, you're not entitled to them, which is sort of counter to the fact that most of those are at a price point where you have to exceed those limits to be able to buy them. So meaningful incentives that can encourage the type of activities we want to see. Okay, any other comments from commissioners? I now would like to open public comment period for this item.
And I believe this is a public hearing, so are we opening the public hearing?
Public comment.
It was noticed as a public hearing. Technically, I think by law, it's not really a public hearing, but we noticed it that way, so
Should it
go
be
ahead
public
and
hearing?
say public hearing, because that's how it
Okay,
was noticed.
I open public hearing comment period. I have no cards. I see no one online. I see no one eager to come forward. I am now closing the public hearing period.
Okay.
Okay. We don't take a vote for this?
No,
do
there's no
we? Yeah.
vote. It's question.
So now we're going to move to the director's report.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you. Okay, several items. First of all, just some upcoming agenda matters. We have a couple of items moving your way specifically in July. We likely will not have your next meeting, second meeting in June. We don't have anything tracking for that meeting, but in July, we will be coming back with a follow-up on our mixed-use discussion. With looking at on individual properties to try to get a sense of what's the right mix or some minimum mix of commercial. If you're going to have housing on properties in commercial districts, there was a direction to look at other communities, so we're doing that right now. And then we'll follow up at a subsequent meeting with collection. At least once a year, we come back with a collection of suggested amendments to the zoning ordinance, so we'll follow up with that. A few other items. We have an application that's come in for a mixed-use project on the large commercial piece at the corner of Sassoon Valley Road and Business Center Drive. Something that's been discussed as a part of the general plan update. The application that's coming in before the general plan is adopted, and it doesn't fully address all the policy direction that has been given by the Planning Commission and the City Council. So staff is working with the applicant to see if we can get some modifications to their proposal. But down the road, expect that something will be coming your way for that property. We've also been engaged with the owner of the mall. There's actually multiple owners. You got Macy's, you've got the former Sears, JCPenney, but the main run of the mall, we've started having discussions with them as they are looking at their future. So nothing tangible at the moment, but just know that we've kicked that process off of having conversations with that owner who is eager to explore opportunities to transform that mall. So more to come on that. Let's see, in July as well, every July we come back to you and have you select your new chair and your new vice chair for the year. So likely at your first meeting in July, which I expect will be your next meeting, do be prepared to be nominating folks for the chair and the vice chair position. So be thinking about that. And lastly, I do want to note that two of our commissioners, their terms are coming to a conclusion, Commissioner Cruzen and Commissioner Evans, and so we are very grateful for all of your service, particularly Commissioner Evans, you're here this evening. I want to note, it's been an absolute pleasure working with you over the last 4 years. I've enjoyed seeing you learn the process. You're real quickly. You pick up on lots of topics and how to be an effective commissioner. Just been an absolute pleasure working with you. Same with Commissioner Cruzen, but you're here tonight, so just I'm directly addressing you, and so we'll miss you very much. Thank you for your service. So with that, I'll conclude my comments.
Do commissioners have any items they'd like to bring forward at this time?
I have one.
Yes.
I have one. So beginning tomorrow at 4 p.m., Solano County Fair kicks off with Ag Day, and there will be special events teaching about agriculture in this county. And the admission for tomorrow is only $1. Friday, Saturday, and Sunday there will be drone and pyrotechnic shows. At 9:15, we will have Confunction, and as our headlining act on Friday. Saturday is Queen Legion, one of the premier Queen tribute bands, and then Sunday is our Latino Hispanic day. So come out, enjoy the fair, have fun. I'll be there most of it as president, so I'd love to see the public out there and support our county fair. It's not the Vallejo Fair, it is the Solano County Fair. It's your fair. Thanks.
Thank you, and thank you for your service on that. With that, we are adjourned to our next meeting of June 26, 2024.